So, hey Jacob, such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to the latest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. Today we have Jacob on the show with us. Jacob is the founder of Relay.app. Pretty sure that you must have seen his post that like blew up very recently about building AI agents, but we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, Relay.app is an AI agent builder where you can build workflows and automations and integrate all your applications that you're using into these workflows and automations that you're building and just save you a lot of time, right? And before Relay.app, like Jacob was leading product manager at Google, where he worked on different products for Google, like Google Calendar, Gmail, Google Workspace, and more, right? So, hey, Jacob, such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
Awesome. So I know Jacob, we when we connected, like we spoke about discussing a few topics, but the one that really stuck with us is to, as a first time founder, like because of AI, I think it's become very easy to build, right, these days. And whether you're building, through these workflows, or whether you're building through these new concept called vibe coding, right? Like everybody is like using
Yeah.
something like a cursor, V0, lovable, and it's becoming easy to build, right? But the real challenge, starts after that. Like one, obviously, building is a challenge, but the real challenge starts after that. Like, how do you figure out like, is that enough to build? Like, have I built enough, right? Like,
Right.
is it what defines an MVP? And then obviously once like, how do you validate that MVP? And then how do you get early traction, early customers, right, to make sure that you are getting some dollars for the amount of efforts that you have put into your white coding project, right? So we'll talk a lot about that, but before we do that, like, why don't you introduce yourself and explain how's your journey been in the SaaS world?
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of my two most recent chapters, but there are maybe two earlier chapters from my background that are also relevant. Once upon a time, I was a PhD student in the AI lab at Stanford, and I really
Mm.
thought that I was going to be a professor of computer science and that I was going to be an artificial intelligence researcher. I ended up dropping out of my PhD to start my first company, which was an AI powered digital calendar called Timeful. This was funny because this was back in 2013, and so AI powered productivity tools are not a new idea; they're just finally working now for
Right.
the first time. And then Timeful was acquired by Google in 2015. That's how I ended up at Google, leading Gmail and Calendar. And
Nice.
so I've gone through a variety of different career progressions, from academia to a startup to a product leader at a large company. Now back to a startup. And in that whole 15-year career, I was working on, AI for productivity tools. So I've stayed in sort of the same domain the entire time. Um, but I never really built a skill set in early go to market. So
Mm.
certainly as a grad student, I didn't build a skill set of finding users. We did recruit some undergrads for research studies, but that's very different from getting real users and real paying customers. Then Timeful was kind of a weird situation, was where back in those days, if you could get featured in the App Store and had good App Store optimization, you didn't really need to worry about go to market outside of that. So we sort of just went viral in the App Store,
Right.
and ended up with a few 100,000 users that way. So we just got kind of lucky there. Frankly, we never really figured out a disciplined and systematic way to reach
Mm.
users. And then at Google, of course, when I inherited Gmail, there were already 800 million users, and yeah, we grew it to over 2 billion. But like, it's a very, very different problem than the cold start
Mm.
problem. And so for the first really 2 years of this new company before it became Relay.app, I'm honestly just so embarrassed looking back at how naive I was about the challenge of getting early customers, and how kind of even basic techniques eluded me. Like, I'll give you one example. And I think we had the right idea, which was like, we're going to build a product prototype in 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to find 10 people who
Mm.
are in the target audience for it to test it, and then we'll go from there. And so I think it was not particularly hard to figure out if an idea had basic legs, like if you could get
Mm.
10 people to like it. And the book that most shaped my thinking there was The Mom Test. If
Mm.
folks haven't read The Mom Test, like, that might be the single most valuable book about startups I've ever read. And
Right.
the title is kind of misleading. Everyone thinks it's kind of like a dig on moms, like, oh, moms are so stupid they can't use technology. If your technology is simple enough for moms, everyone can use it. That's actually not the point of the book at all. The point of the book is, how do you get meaningful feedback from people who are generally nice to you? And
Hmm.
so if I say, hey, I've been working on this idea, can you check it out and let me know what you think? I've put, in the words of the book, I've put my ego on the line. I've asked you, a polite person who's my friend, to lie to me to make me feel good, because I don't want you, like, the way I've framed that question, you're not going to say,
Right.
actually, this whole idea is rubbish. So that really shaped my early thinking about, like, how, once you can take an idea, can you
Hmm.
get meaningful feedback about whether it solves a real problem? And the book has a bunch of techniques for that, like asking specific questions about the past rather than hypothetical questions about the future, and
Hmm.
brushing off compliments and digging deeper. Like, there's a bunch of valuable techniques there. So I think relatively quickly we got pretty good at figuring out, is this idea worth pursuing at all?
Hmm.
um, and so I think there's one technique to that, which is like, find 10 people who you think might be a good fit, do a mom test style interview with them, and you'll know, honestly, just from 10 people with a mom test style interview, you'll know if there's something there or if there's nothing there, and then you can go from 10 to 50 if there's something there.
Right.
Then what was really, really hard was, once there was something there and you validated with sort of 10 people that it solves a real problem and maybe they're trying and they're using it, like, where do you go from there? Like, how do you go from 10 interview subjects to 10 real users to 10 paying customers? And for a freemium product like ours, you need many more users than customers, even though we convert at actually a pretty decent rate at the moment. um and I remember just floundering, and this was so hard for me coming from Google, where, when I was leading product for Gmail,
Hmm.
there was so much coming at me. Like, there were so many people who wanted to meet with the head of product for Gmail, or so many people who wanted to do things with Gmail, that just the
Right.
demand to use our product and to work with me was overwhelming. And then as soon as you change your title from, head of product for Gmail to founder CEO, it's impossible to get anyone to talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
or it's a totally different thing. Like, nothing will happen unless you make it happen.
Hmm.
And so the book the book that I found most valuable for this part of the journey was a book called Traction, that
Hmm.
was written by the founder of DuckDuckGo. And what it talks about is sort of a methodical way to experiment with the 20 different marketing channels that may work for an early
Hmm.
startup. Everything from in-person events to SEO-oriented content marketing to paid ads.
Hmm.
There's probably a few new channels you'd add today. The book is maybe 8 or 10 years old. And it basically says, look at these 20 channels. Think
Hmm.
of the 5 that you think would make the most sense for your business. Try those 5. If you find one that works, double down on that one. If you don't find
Right.
one that works, run the exercise again. And it makes the point that, like, for each stage of growth, you really only need one channel that's working
Right.
if you really exploit it. And
Hmm.
so for our first stage of growth, the goal was to get to 10 customers. 10 customers. And so the channels that made sense were, number one, direct engagement on Reddit and in other
Hmm.
communities. So I would go to all the relevant subreddits, either the automation oriented subreddits, the AI oriented
Hmm.
subreddits, or the, like, function specific subreddits like marketing, sales, HR. And Reddit has very specific social norms. You cannot be overly promotional about your product, but it turns out that if you try to give someone a genuinely helpful answer, and then
Right.
later in the conversation your product becomes helpful, that's how we got, I think, I don't know, 3 or 4 of our first 10 customers. Then, of course, going through my network to find seed users and getting direct introductions to people, largely on LinkedIn, but in some cases on email. We tried cold email, and it was a terrible fit for us.
Hmm.
We literally sent probably 10,000 cold emails and got one paying customer from
Right.
them. And not only did the numbers not look great, it just didn't feel right. And this is the thing.
Hmm.
I think this is maybe the thing that I can't articulate, but is so important. Is you'll see so many stories that lionize the founder who didn't give up and just kept going, and so many stories that lionize the founder who pivoted. But, like, how do you know which one to do in your situation? So there's just sort of a feel thing. So we got our first 10 customers through a combination of our personal network, Reddit, a little bit of cold outbound, a launch on Product Hunt. But then we looked at all of those channels and we were like, those are not the channels that are going to get us from 10 to 100. Like, they're
Right.
just way too high effort. Product Hunt, we'd already done the Product Hunt launch, so
Right.
we weren't going to do it, couldn't do it again for 6 months. And so then this was about a year and a half ago. We got our first 10 customers sort of we launched in October of 2023, and we got our first paying customer kind of in December 2023. And then we got, quickly a few paying customers up to 10 at the beginning of 2024. So like, wow, only 14 months ago. It's crazy how much has happened in the last 14 months. Then we did a new exercise of, okay, now that we have 10, how are we going to get to 100? And we identified a few channels that we thought made sense. Number one was partner marketing. So we're a platform that integrates with many other software tools, Airtable, Notion, SmartSuite, Gmail, Slack. And so we thought, oh, if we could get listed in partner marketplaces, if we could do joint social media posts with them, if we could do a webinar with them, that would drive some of their users to us because we're a relevant complementary tool. Another thing we tried was SEO, both programmatic and organic. Famously, the leader in the automation space for a long time, Zapier, they were amazing at programmatic SEO. They would generate these landing pages for every pair
Right.
of products. And so we're like, oh, maybe that same thing would work for us. And it kind of did, but like a good rule of thumb is that if the market leader in your category is really good in a channel, you probably need to find a different channel because
Right. Yeah.
or especially if it's sort of a zero sum channel like SEO, because with SEO, like you're either in the top 3 for a given query or you're nowhere.
Right.
Unlike with social media or with YouTube, where if they're doing something that really works on social media and YouTube, maybe that'll work for you too. So you have to kind of use your judgment of like, if they are using this channel effectively, does that mean it is more likely or less likely that I can use it effectively? And in the answer of SEO, the answer was actually that's less likely that we can use it effectively because it's zero sum. We're competing for the same keywords. Whereas if they have a really good social media strategy, I'll get to that in a second, there's a good chance that it could actually work for me because the same kind of viral templates work on social media. So we tried partner marketing, we tried writing a blog, we tried doing programmatic SEO, and we tried doing a little bit of social media. That's when I started posting on LinkedIn for the first time. And in that phase of the company, partner marketing was the one. Partner marketing, and then a few of our bottom of funnel SEO posts. So we did partner marketing. We did a webinar with a company called SmartSuite. It's kind of, you can think of it as like an Airtable or Notion style product. We got 50 customers from that. We got listed in a bunch of marketplaces that would send us a trickle, like Linear sent us a couple per week, Adio sent us a couple per week, Notion sent us a couple, users per week, and then some of those would convert to paying customers. And then we wrote these bottom of funnel blog posts that were focused on competitor alternatives, Zapier alternatives, Make alternatives, Workato alternatives, Zapier pricing, Zapier versus Make. And those got us sort of a steady stream of, 20 to 30 new signups per week, of whom some would convert. And so then that got us to like the 100 customer mark. But then we were like, oh shoot, none of the techniques that got us from 10 to 100 have the potential that we see to scale from 100 to 1,000. Because with SEO, we were fighting this long game battle of every programmatic keyword with Zapier. That didn't look like it was going to pan out. For the bottom of funnel blog posts, we had already written all the ones we had thought of and kind of hit a ceiling at like 400 or 500 clicks to our website.
So what was the timeline that you're looking at from going from 100 to 1,000, and what was the timeline it for you for 10 to 100?
Yeah, so just roughly speaking, 0 to 10 took about 3 months. I'd have to go back and check the exact numbers, but 10 to 100 took roughly 6 months. And now we're in the middle of the 100 to 1,000. It looks like that's going to end up taking also 6 to 9 months, depending on how fast we go. And so yeah, the channels that got us to 10 were Reddit, our network, and a bit of cold email. The channels that got us 10 to 100 were programmatic SEO, blog-based SEO, and partner marketing. And we're like, oh shoot, those are not the ones that are going to work. And then the second observation we had was, if we're going to be a product-led self-serve product, we need some sort of channel that compounds with our user base, because eventually you need to be growing exponentially, 15, 20% month over month. So you need something that compounds with our user base. So then in June, or kind of later last year, we did another big evaluation of like, okay, what are the channels that are going to make sense for us? And so, of course, So we partners and affiliates was one that we pursued. Another that we pursued was social media. And the third that we pursued was kind of community and virality and direct sharing. And those are all three of those are big buckets. But we looked at all three of those and we're like, those could scale. Like those could actually compound with our user base and get us from 100 to 1,000, or even from 1,000 to 10,000. And the thing that and nothing worked from July through December of last year. Nothing really worked. Like, yeah, we launched an affiliate program and it now contributes about 7% of our revenue, which is nice, but that's not a game changer. We have partners, like implementation partners, consulting partners. These are experts who run agencies or consultancies, and those partners are great. They give us great product feedback. They do bring in a few customers for us. Like, they're a really engaged part of our community. They help other users out, so they're super valuable. But they're not bringing in massive top of funnel for us. And then social media, I just couldn't quite get any traction on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube. I was trying a little bit of everything. I was making some short videos on TikTok and YouTube. I was making long form videos, like tutorial content. I was posting on LinkedIn, and it just wasn't moving the needle. And then I had sort of the breakthrough at the very end of the year, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. I wrote my first viral LinkedIn post. And I still can't point to what went viral about it. It was something about the language I used around AI agents, something about the use case being resonant, something about the way I talked about how it was valuable in just very concise, practical, real terms. Just like, hey, here's exactly what this thing does for me. It's actually useful. I use it. Let me know if you're interested. And that got about 600,000 impressions on LinkedIn. It took my follower count. That one post took my follower count from like 5,000 to 10,000.
Wow, crazy.
And most importantly, it gave me sort of a formula of like, oh, this is the language and the content that resonates.
So what was
so
the post? Like, what was that post?
Do you want me to can I share my screen? Will people be able to see it?
Yeah, definitely.
Let me just share my screen. I'll show you my LinkedIn game. Let's see if this screen share will work. And I'll narrate as well for people who are just listening. So that post, oh, this time. Okay, so let me show you my LinkedIn trajectory. Sorry, it takes a moment to load. What I'm pulling up now is the graph of my LinkedIn performance over the last 365 days. You can see I'm almost at 5 million impressions. I'm probably going to hit 5 million impressions like today. You can see nothing. Boom, big spike. 250,000 impressions on December 23rd. And then I've had a few big spikes since then, but even the baseline is, even if you look at like a mediocre day like this, that's 28,000 impressions that day. And so that post, I've now done a few very successful posts. I'm now kind of scrolling through my list of top posts. The first one that broke through was this one. This was posted 3 months ago on December 23rd. It says, I made an AI agent for looking up LinkedIn profiles. You give it whatever you have, name, email, company, location, job title, education, anything else you can think of, and it will find the best match. If the AI isn't sure, it will ask you for help to choose between a few options. I use this a ton in preparing for meetings, welcoming new customers, and more. It's more reliable than anything else I've tried, and you can do a lot of lookups for free. Let me know if you're interested, and I'll send you a link. And then it includes a 4-second GIF that shows a spreadsheet with on the leftmost column information of people I want to look up, and on the right column it shows the LinkedIn profiles kind of like filling in dynamically over time. And yeah, so this post got 2,885 comments, 543,000 impressions, about 1,600 reactions, and I was like, oh man, something about that post clicked. And the way I got the idea for that post was one of the other products in our space, Gumloop, which is a great product. Their founder, Max, is really good on Twitter. He's had several posts go really viral on Twitter. And I was like, oh, something about this format he's doing is working. It's like a quick teaser, 3 sentences about what the thing does, and then a 4 to 5 second GIF. I was like, oh, let me just see if that format works for me. And it
Right.
works, and it worked like crazy. It doesn't work every time. And so now you can see that I've done, that one was 500,000 impressions. My biggest one ever was 850,000 impressions. But I've had a bunch of good ones: 150, 130, 94, 84, 43, 41, 40, 36, 34, 30, 25, 25, 23, 18, 17, 17, 17. And so what that basically told me is that I think LinkedIn is going to work for us as a channel. Like, something about the AI agent, the use case, that LinkedIn was going to work. So I started posting on LinkedIn 2 or 3 times a week. I found that for me, weekend posts perform way better. Test your own stuff. Your mileage may vary. And then LinkedIn became the #1 contributor of our top of funnel, basically right then at the end of December, and has stayed true until right now. Now, LinkedIn is not as consistent week over week as SEO or some other channels, because it does kind of rely on when a post will hit. But I was doing those posts that were getting anywhere from 20 to 150,000 impressions once or twice a week, and that became our top of funnel. Then it made sense to start to develop mid funnel as well. So LinkedIn is kind of how people first find out about us typically, but LinkedIn doesn't give them enough to really know the product or know what they want to use it for. And so our 2 big mid funnel investments are our YouTube channel and our email newsletter. And so the LinkedIn is for people who have not heard about the product, but just want to learn about AI. So my LinkedIn content is not even very specific to Relay.app. It's just like, hey, I'll teach you some useful stuff about AI. And that's how my LinkedIn has gone from like 5,000 to 29,000 followers in the last 3 months. Mostly educational content about AI agents and AI. But then our YouTube channel is like, okay, you want to use the product? Let me really show you what to use it for and how. And so I can show you our YouTube channel. And again, the moral of this story was like, just like with LinkedIn, it took a solid year of experimentation and pain before anything started to work. So let me show you our YouTube channel now. We now have almost 5,000 subscribers. We get 17,000-ish views per month, 550 hours of watch time. If I show you the subscriber count over the last year, it's the same story. Nothing, 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 nothing. Man, it took me to get to 500 subscribers, took like 9 months and 50 videos. And then all of a sudden, when the content on LinkedIn started resonating and I started cross-promoting the YouTube from LinkedIn, like boom, in the last less than a month, we've gone from like 1,000 subscribers to almost 5,000 subscribers. And that growth curve, looks very good. So I think when we talk next, it'll be way higher. And so the answer for this phase of the company from a marketing perspective, it turned out to be LinkedIn and social media for top of funnel, and then YouTube and email for mid funnel. And then also, we now have a very active community, 700 community members, and they are spreading the product naturally via word of mouth. We just launched a template gallery. People can share things. And so I'm now very confident. We're not quite at the 1,000 paying customers yet, but we will be fairly soon. And I'm very confident that this set of channels can get us to 1,000 customers. Then once we're at 1,000 customers, we'll have to revisit. Can this same set of channels get us to 10,000, or do we need to revisit again? At the moment, because of how well LinkedIn and YouTube and email marketing and user-to-user virality compound, I'm actually pretty confident that these particular channels can get us from 1,000 to 10,000 also, maybe even from 10,000 to 100,000 also, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I think the point I'm trying to communicate is not so much like you must post on LinkedIn or you must make YouTube videos. It's more like, depending on where you are, think about which 3 or 4 channels are likely to get you to the next customer goal, which can you experiment with the most quickly. And then once those channels get you to the goal, revisit, like, are these the channels that can also get me to the next goal, or do I need to develop some new channels?
Nice.
And then now that LinkedIn is working, LinkedIn is sort of our golden channel, and we want to get as much out of it as possible. And I'm only just scratching the surface of what you can do on LinkedIn. Like, I make these posts, but when a post gets 5,000 comments, I don't even have time to follow up on all the comments, and you can't really use automation tools with LinkedIn because they're against the terms of service. And so what I'm thinking about now is just like, now that we have this one channel that's really working LinkedIn, how can I get the most out of it? I don't follow up with people at all. Like, I'm really dropping a lot of very easy demand on the floor. And so I'm not thinking about like how do I get all the value out of this channel that's working before I start thinking about additional channels.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. No, I think you shared a wonderful trajectory of for Relay itself, and I think this has all happened in the past like 12 months. So it's very real. It's very fresh, right?
Yeah.
Like oftentimes, like people talk about like what worked, let's say 2 years back, or what worked like
Yeah.
5 years back, and
Yeah, no,
I
this
don't
is
think that's
literally in the last 3 months.
yeah, that's what. And I think you have a very nice structured approach as well. Like what helped you get from 0 to 10, from 10 to 100, and from 100 to 1,000 now. And once you reach 1,000, like you're already thinking like, how do we go from like 1,000 to 10,000, right? Like that's
Yeah,
the
and my
that's goal.
general philosophy is
Hmm.
I'm spending about 80% of my time thinking about how to hit the next goal, and then 20% of my time thinking about hit the goal after that. I find
Right.
that if you spend any less than 80% of your time on the current goal, you risk missing it. But you don't want to spend 100% of your time on the current goal without thinking at all about the future, because then you'll reach that unprepared. And so that's been roughly the right balance for me. 80% of my time I'm like, how do I in this case how do I go from 100 to 1,000? And then 20% of my time I'm like, okay, once we get to 1,000, how are we gonna get from 1,000 to 10,000?
Like that's a good way to think as well. But like Jacob, like taking a little step back. I know we discussed a lot about distribution head on,
Yeah,
right? And which is like which is very important, right? But even before, I just want to go, to your time at Google, or to the specific time when you were just exiting Google and starting
yeah,
to think of hey, I want to build this, right? Like, why did you choose this problem when obviously, as you mentioned, right, you mentioned some good competitors
yeah.
in the show, and I you mentioned like you have created those pages as well on the website. So it was a space. It is not a new space, right? And I'm sure like with Zapier and with Make and all the others, they also have built like AI capabilities in their product, right? So it was not a new space with AI as well. So what made you think of like, hey, this is there is the problem here, or there's a gap here,
Yeah. So
like that.
first, we actually didn't start in this very specific Zapier style automation space. The company started with kind of two, and this was in mid 2021. So it took us kind of a while to figure out what we were doing. In mid 2021, we started with two kind of foundational insights. The first was there is not enough investment being made or attention being paid to cross product workflows. So, like when I was on
Mm,
Gmail, we would spend hours and months agonizing about what exactly does the reply button look like? What exactly does this pixel look like? How exactly does the user click to use Smart Reply? And then we'd go to customer. They'd be like, yeah, they'd be like, whatever, reply button, it works fine. I don't care. How do I get my data
mm,
from Gmail into Salesforce or from ClickUp into Gmail? And we'd be like, sorry, I don't know. Use the API. Good luck. Don't care. um, and I don't mean to be harsh to Google, but this is true of every company. Every
right.
company, they're incentivized to think about like, oh, how do we make a great UX and experience within our product? But no user in the real world is just sitting in Notion all day. They're sitting in Notion and Gmail and Slack and Calendly, and probably they need to use all of those to get even a simple thing done. So we thought there was a big opportunity to do something cross-product that looked more holistically at like the work the user needed to get done. And the second observation, this was like a year before ChatGPT came out, was AI is going to be important in this somehow. Like AI is gonna help somehow. And so that was the idea. Cross-product workflows powered by AI. And then we experimented with a bunch of different stuff, with these mom test style interviews. We built a stand up tool. We built a contextual knowledge base. We built an automated to do list that would pull kind of action items from all of your different tools. We built an employee onboarding tool. We built a bunch of different stuff. And then we eventually decided like the right way to attack this problem was a workflow tool that combined automations with human in the loop tasks that would connect all your different products together. But even then, we still were a bit shy about competing head on with Zapier. We're like, no, we're making a new thing. It's sort of between Zapier and Asana because it combines automations with human in the loop task management. And then it was only about a year and a half ago, 19 months ago, something like that, 19, 20 months ago, that we said, no, we're just going to build an automation tool and we're going to go right into the realm of Zapier. And my big learning there is that like competition is always a good thing. Competition is
Right.
always a good thing. Like, it means that users care. It means there's a real problem. It means there's an anchoring in people's minds of like what a solution looks like. And what I found is it is, and was counterintuitive for a while, but like it is way, way easier for me to explain to you why we're better than Zapier than to try to explain to you in the abstract what we are. So it's like a workflow tool that automates some actions across products, but also as human, you're like, huh? What? I say like, no, we're Zapier, but we're easier to use for non-technical users and have human in the loop support. And people are like, oh, okay, like I need like people who know Zapier are like, oh, I need those two things. Like my non-technical
Right.
team struggles to set things up, and I often feel out of control, and I can't trust the automations because there's no human in the loop. And so that was kind of the journey. Like, so it started not with a specific, I want to compete in this space. It started with like, here's an opportunity that I think is underappreciated in productivity and collaboration tools, which is the domain I've worked in my entire career. And then eventually evolved into like, oh, here's the market that I think is well positioned to solve that problem. Let's compete in that market and then evolve with it. And where we're at now is when I look at our space, there's kind of two different classes of companies. There are the traditional automation companies, Zapier, Make.com, and 8N, that are trying to layer AI onto their existing products. They have some advantages. They have all the integrations, they have known brands, they have big user bases, but it's very hard to change an existing product to retrofit AI on top of it. And then there are the AI first companies like Lindy, Gumloop, Relevance, Crew, a few others that are more AI native, but they don't have the same, integration depth or workflow depth or user bases. And so it's fascinating. And I think the other thing that I like about competition, in addition to the fact that it kind of reduces the market risk in the sense because you know that there's a problem that people care about.
Right.
Man, does it push you to build a better product? Every time I see Gumloop or Lindy or Relevance launch something interesting, I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. I wonder how we can incorporate that insight into our product. And I'm not saying this is like, direct copying because the way they've implemented it wouldn't work in our context and vice versa. But it's about like, I think we're all getting inspired by the ideas that others have, and we're going to end up building products that are way better for all of our customers than if the other companies didn't exist.
Hmm. That's interesting. And like the final product of what Relay.app is today, and the idea of building something like this. Like I know you mentioned that you stumbled upon like different ideas before you finalize the one that you have now. But when you did finalize, like what did the MVP look like? Like what was the basic product that you built, and what was the mom test
Yeah,
for
I mean
lack
it's
of
hard to
better
it's hard
words
to
that
even
you did?
say what the MVP was because there were so many different versions over time. But at some point in October 2023, we decided we're going to launch an alternative to Zapier that's better along these three dimensions. It's easier to use for non-technical people. It has human in loop support, and it has a better AI integration. And that one was actually super easy to validate because it was
Hmm.
really easy to find existing Zapier users who were frustrated.
Right.
So we just went and found 50 Zapier users who were frustrated, said, does this address your frustration? For about half of them, it did. For about half of them, we were missing something that we didn't have yet. We were missing integration or some other capability. But that gave us enough to know that, like, yeah, fundamentally, we're on to something. There's an opportunity here. Now we just have a lot of work to do to build all these integrations and all of these workflow capabilities like paths and iterators and webhooks and custom HTTP requests and wait steps. Like, there is a lot of product surface area to build in this category. And so at some point we had to give ourselves the confidence that like, yep, we're going for it. We're going to compete
Right.
head to head and we have to build all that stuff.
Interesting. And Jacob, like a couple of things before I know we've been chatting for a long time
Yeah.
and there's so much of depth here, but a couple of things before we move on to the lightning round section of the episode, right? I know because of AI, and you mentioned like there's so many things that everybody's building, and you can obviously get inspired by like what others are building and try to inculcate that in your product. But obviously it won't be the exact same, and it's
Yeah.
it's not like copying directly because it wouldn't work same in the different contexts. But in that case, how do you bring on focus, like, hey, we want to pick this direction, doesn't matter like what everybody else is building, versus there is a other side, like if you don't build this now, because there's a wave that's going on, people want that, and you want to really experiment, right? Like, so how do you balance between these two, right?
Yeah, I mean, we never build something just because we notice a competitor has built that thing. We build something because we see users are really liking a thing.
Um,
Either users are directly asking us for a thing, users are liking that experience elsewhere, or we think
um,
it would be a great idea and we validate it with users. And this can apply across domains. So, for example, like we're not going to build a website builder. We're not going to compete directly with
um,
Lovable and Bolt and V0 and all these companies. But there are a bunch of UI patterns that they've developed about how you can interact with natural language on the left, and then it creates this
um,
artifact on the right, and then in some cases you can go directly manipulate the artifact, and in some cases you keep manipulating it via natural language. Like that pattern is clearly resonating with users,
um,
and we've used it ourselves, and yeah, it passes the sniff test. Like it actually works really well, and so we want to incorporate that pattern into our product, but it's not going to look exactly the same. And so I think you have to be careful, like whenever a product demo video gets a lot of hype, whether it's Operator or Manus or whatever is getting hyped these days, we do make sure to sanity check for ourselves that it actually works. And so for Operator, for example, super cool potential in the future. I have not personally been able to get it to work for anything real. And
um,
so we are not yet going to bet the company on an operator like experience. We're open to incorporating it in the future, and we're going to keep a close eye on it as it evolves. But like, it's not yet ready to be useful based on our sniff test. Whereas some of these other patterns of like in natural language generating a structured workflow plan or an app or whatever, and then modifying it, like that does seem to work. And it worked in our testing. And so like I really try, like the biggest advice I always give is like spend less time reading blog posts, more time trying things. Like you
um,
can read blog posts forever and people will tell you, oh man, this is the greatest thing ever. Operator's the greatest thing ever. Like, did you try it? Like, did you use it for anything real yourself? Because if you didn't use it for anything real yourself, like how do you possibly know that it works?
Interesting. And like one last thing before we move on to the lightning round, right? So I feel like because everybody is into this vibe coding zone as well, a lot of products are getting built, and because they like it, and which products like Cursor and Visual and Lovable, right? They support these vibe coding as well, and they've shot up their ARR like crazy, right? Like 11 labs, like all the AI first companies, like they've onboarded huge amount of users, right? And there's always an argument, as you said, like most of it might be hype, like the operator, and most of it might be like there's some actual real value people are getting. That's why they are paying for it, and that's why these companies are growing as well, right? So in that case, right, like how do you truly determine, like, hey, you have reached a good product market fit, and over the years and over the months, right, you are maintaining that product market fit, right? Like and not just like riding the hype because hey, it was popular now,
Yeah,
and
for me,
it might not be popular like 3 months later, and you see like a downfall of users and downfall
yeah.
of like churn and everything, right?
If I had to pick one thing, cohort retention is the only thing that matters. Like, you need your cohorts to stabilize, and ideally to stabilize at a relatively high number, and ideally not only stabilize, but eventually have like an upward kink at the end as churned users come back to the product. Um, and so cohort retention is the only real way you have product
Hmm.
market fit. Because that's the only way you can grow sustainably is if your pre-existing cohorts, stick around and you can start stacking them.
Right.
Unfortunately, cohort retention takes some time to figure
Hmm.
out. And so you might need to use proxies in the near term, like sentiment or surveys or depth of engagement. Those are all good. Um, but ultimately, you have to see if people will stick around. And I don't know any of those businesses well enough to comment on what their retention looks like. They claim it's pretty good, so I have no reason to doubt it yet.
Nice, nice. But like once you have got it, like what are some things or some signs that you have seen, or maybe at Relay that you're trying to do, that to maintain that PMF, right? Like how do you what are some of the steps that you're taking so that people don't lose out, or you don't churn them?
Yeah, I mean I don't think there's a magical answer. Like
Hmm.
uh don't like if you tell a product manager your job is to reduce churn, what they're going to do is they're going to make the cancel button harder to find. That's not the right way to do it. Like, the only way to reduce churn fundamentally is to make a really good product that solves a really important need. So I cannot point to like a tip or a trick. It's just like, yeah, keep meeting users all the time, figure out if they love your product. If they don't, make them love it. If they do, figure out what else you could do for them that's valuable. There's no magical formula to reducing churn, that's for sure.
Nice, nice, great. I think this has been a very good discussion and a lot of learnings and good insights into your journey in building Relay.app, right? And real insights, right? Real and fresh insight. That's really important these days.
Yeah.
So I have like three more questions, right, for
Cool.
the lightning round, and you have to answer. Since it's a lightning round, you have to answer quickly, right?
Okay.
So because we are in the AI world, and obviously you cannot answer Relay.app, but like, what's your like, go to AI tool that you use daily and like frequently, and you cannot stop paying for it?
So daily would be Claude, the Claude chat UI.
Hmm.
Weekly, I've been really enjoying Napkin AI for generating
Right.
little graphics. And I've really been enjoying the deep research products from both OpenAI and Perplexity.
Nice, nice, very interesting. And on to the second one, right? So, what is the one thing over the years, right? Like, what's the one thing that has helped you shorten your learning curve?
Um, Not being afraid to put myself out there and look silly. So, just as an example, like, I was really insecure about, like, hey, all these other people out there, they know more about AI than I do. What, I shouldn't post about it on LinkedIn. I shouldn't make YouTube videos about it. I'm not qualified to do that. And then I just started doing it, and I realized, oh, I actually do know more than a lot of people. And by the way, by putting myself out there publicly, I learn way more quickly because people criticize and point out and make suggestions. And so, yeah, just like, get out there publicly. Write LinkedIn posts, write Twitter posts, make YouTube videos, like, put yourself out there.
Nice, nice, interesting. And on to the third one, right? So what do you know about your work now that you wish you would have known when you first started?
Run towards competition, not away from it.
Nice. That's I think that's what you did, and I think it turned out like really well, and
Yeah.
that's been a good.
Don't. I mean, I'd rather compete with great companies over a problem people care about than go toil away in obscurity on something that doesn't matter.
Hmm. Nice. That's a good insight. Like again, like great insights from you, Jacob, and really thankful to you and grateful to you for taking the time and coming on, sharing these good insights with us. And obviously, like, do share more about the AI agent webinars that you're doing and you're planning continuing to do. I'm happy to include a link in the
Yeah.
description.
So first, please, follow me on LinkedIn, and you'll see the content I post. And then I run a build an AI agent session with me every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll include the link to sign up. They're really fun. They're interactive. I make all sorts of mistakes as we go, but we end up with something that's real and useful and works. And it's
Nice.
pretty fun.
Nice. Awesome. And for everybody who wants to try out Relay.app, that's Relay.app, Relay.app, if you
Yeah,
want
that's all there is
to
to it. Sign
check
up for
out.
free. We have a generous free tier, and get going.
Nice. Great. Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for your time and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much.